kids nowadays, if they watch stuff like this, it'll putrefy their brains and they'll hit each other with foam swords and they'll dress up in cloaks and go to the Renaissance Festival. And society will collapse.
That's our whole plot.
That's the problem with society.
Witches and role players will take over and the world will...
Yeah, there's not enough child violence, if you ask me.
And as I'm telling this story, we see an apocalyptic background and I hear a Karen saying, and things that were once lost or once forgotten were now lost.
Yeah, she'd say it way more nasally than that, though.
We used to drink from the water hose when I was a kid.
And I need to speak to your manager about that.
I said thank you when the guy handed me fries and he said no problem. What does that even mean? No problem. You're supposed to say you're welcome. I'm like, Jesus Christ, why? You are so nitpicking if you're worried about somebody saying no problem.
Except it's Galadriel telling us all this.
Yeah, Galadriel is the cosmic Karen. She's the Karen of the elves.
We have not clapped yet, y'all.
Watch the scenes
we
again.
have not clapped yet.
That's okay. As long as we get the clap somewhere near the beginning, it's fine. I can match it up.
That's what I always say.
As long as I get the clap at some point, I know that we had a good conversation.
God. We are too early to be going off the rails. No clap.
And we're talking about Fellowship of the Ring. We're like settling in for a long pod. This could be... Watch, it ends in 35 minutes with us going, yeah, well, fuck you too. Okay, that thus ends.
Yeah.
Thus ends the
Fellowship. Yeah, the Fellowship of Screen Share. All right, let's do the clap.
I want to know what the hell is going on.
3, 2, 1.
Perfect.
As you've noted by the title, and if you're following the pod, you've been looking forward to this for a little bit, probably. But we are now doing the Yearies of series for Jamie, and Jamie has picked
the Fellowship of the Lord of the Rings series. The Fellowship of the Ring is the first movie we watched.
Now, to clarify, we're just doing the Lord of the Rings. We're not doing the Hobbit in this run.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Whew. Oh, thank goodness!
Maybe
I
that's
wanted
my
to
next
walk out with like
pick, but I really have something much more torturous in mind for you guys for my second
Lord.
pick.
I was going to make some enemies. I was going to.
It all depends on how nice your series are to me, about how nice my series are to you.
Oh, so it's a political game. I see.
Yeah, it's a
You have to be
transactional
nice
thing.
to your shows.
It is.
That's it. I'm picking the Howard the Duck series.
No, you don't have to be nice to my shows. You just have to not make me watch horrible movies.
I would watch the Howard the Duck series. That's one movie, and it's fantastic.
And you get to see duck boobies. That would be totally in line with the theme of our podcast. As of, the last 40 episodes.
I don't know that I support that the interspecies erotica is the theme of our podcast. Like,
it's not. We didn't intend it. You know, great things happen along the way. The interspecies erotica is the friends we made along the way.
yeah, okay.
Anyways, Fellowship of the Ring. We are watching Fellowship of the Ring, and of course, because we are not fake nerds, we watch the extended edition all in one sitting. I know for some of you that's nothing. Some of you are going, I watched the entire trilogy extended edition in one sitting without going to the bathroom. And I'm like, good for you, I guess, but
You need to
watched
get your
the
bladder
first
health
one.
checked.
Yeah. Don't do that to
yeah,
yourself.
it's not healthy. It's not healthy. Make
It's
sure
not.
you pee. Fellowship of the Ring, written by J.R.R. Tolkien. I've heard his name pronounced a bunch of different ways, but from what I gather, that sounds closer to what he pronounced it, was Tolkien. Let's talk first about what is your history with Lord of the Rings? Like, have you read the books? I mean, taking outside of this movie, we'll all assume we've seen this movie. But aside from that, did you read the books? Did you play video games? What was your history with it? Let's start with you, Jamie. It's your pick. So what was your history with Lord of the Rings?
Here's some deep Jamie lore. In fourth grade, my fourth grade teacher, Mr. Peterson, would read to us from The Hobbit after lunch every day. And then he continued into the series as far as we could go. We got about a third of the way into Two Towers by the end of the school year. And then he encouraged us all to continue reading them, which if you are in fourth grade and you are trying to get through the Lord of the Rings series, good on you, because that's some slogging. My sisters also all had him, and one of my sisters was a teacher, and so I spent my summers with her because obviously she didn't work during the summer, and we would spend our summers casting live-action versions of the Lord of the Rings back in the 80s.
Aw.
With some very 80s actors. And so when the movie came out, or when they announced that the movie was coming, we were like crazy nerding out about it. Couldn't wait for it to come.
I hate to interrupt you, but Do you remember any of your cast?
Oh, yes.
Your original?
Absolutely.
Okay. We'll have to talk about that.
It's
for
like
sure.
if my hint will be that if you took Willow and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and mashed them together, that was probably a good amount of the cast because those were like our favorite movies at the time.
Go on.
Yeah.
Go on. No.
So yeah.
Totally up my alley. Val Kilmer as a swordsman.
Uh-huh.
Joanne Whaley Kilmer as a redheaded, like she's probably one of the Rohirrim women. Rohirrim.
Right. And then you had like Christian Slater. I don't remember exactly where I threw him. I think I made him Legolas. Oh,
Christian Slater would have been a good Legolas.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard it argued, and Keith, you let's have this as be a little segue to you, and I'll impregnate the toss with a question.
Bad adjective.
Okay, you know what you do? You buy yourself a tape recorder. You just record yourself for a whole day. I think you're going to be surprised at some of your phrasing.
Yeah, pun intended. But so like you have read the books, or you're reading the books right now, and I'm curious that when I've read some commentary about the differences between the books and the movie, a lot of people say that Legolas is one of the big differences. That in the books he's a very emotional person, whereas in the movie he seems like a Vulcan from Star Trek, kind of detached from his emotions. Tell us your history and answer that little question for me.
All right. I will get to that question. My history starts with the Hobbit cartoon that I watched growing up.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Which I love, and Gollum terrified me and was one of the like first things to actually scare me.
Yeah.
And so
it was creepy.
Yeah.
Gollum is creepy.
Yeah. His voice in that and just his obsessiveness, and it was just, I don't know, that cartoon is so well done, as I remember it.
It's the same drawing style as The Last Unicorn, and that drawing style had a way of like, as Secret of Nim, almost even, it was probably a different animator, but you see what I'm saying? Like that kind of serious animation that kind of, as a kid, freaked me out even seeing it. But
yes. And so I had that in my back of my head as one of my favorite things. Then there was a Lord of the Rings Volume 1 RPG for the Super Nintendo that I played and was hard, so I didn't ever get very far in it, but I was still kept on chugging against it as a kid.
Really?
Yes. It was one of my first actual RPGs. It was like the first Final Fantasy on Nintendo, and then Final Fantasy 3.
Oh my God, I don't remember seeing this. This is amazing.
Yeah, it was. I loved it. It probably is a crappy game. It's just my childhood memory being like, oh, this is related to The Hobbit. I like The Hobbit, and so that sort of thing. Because I like The Hobbit, I read it in 6th grade. Now this will tell you the difference of the Louisiana educational system. In 6th grade, I read it for a extra credit, and the teacher said, I don't believe that you read The Hobbit, and made me do
for fun.
Yeah.
On your own for fun. Right. No, I ain't buying it.
And made me do a book report on it, so I had to do that.
I have to interject here that my senior year, when all your work starts piling up and you have all these different things you have to do, I had to do a book report on a book, and I did one on The Hobbit, and I did not reread The Hobbit because I just did it off of memory. Sorry, Miss Winnell. I lied.
So she didn't get accused of what you did. Your karma balanced out.
Yeah.
Go see.
So then, a lot of time goes forward. I'd heard, I got into Dungeons and Dragons. I heard through osmosis how a lot of fantasy tropes come from Lord of the Rings, or like they were refined by Lord of the Rings and made standard. So I always had that in my periphery, but I never read the books and was never like, quote unquote, into it until I saw these movies, which blew me away seeing them in movies, because they seem almost, especially now reading the books, they seem, it almost seems daunting and impossible to make. Like as I'm reading the book, I'm like, man, how the fuck did they make these movies?
And stays so true to like the book. They did not leave out a ton.
Right.
All the main points are there. Like it's very true to the book adaptation.
But
adaptation.
To your question, yes, Legolas is a bit more talkative and emotive in the books. He's not quite as Vulcan.
Which is, like, to me, it's because he's literally like a teenage elf. In elf years, he's a teenager. Even in elves, teenagers are going to be a little more out of control with their emotions, and I think they could have done that and still kept the movie very good.
So with him being emotive, is he likable? Do you like him as a character?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. He doesn't come across annoying or judgmental or condescending or anything.
No, and his friendship with Gimli is it's you get to see it bud and grow a little bit better in the books so far. So that's kind of a nice touch. I mean, it's obviously there on screen in the movies, but I was even wondering if that was made up for the movies or not. And no, that's also a key part of the character. But yes, I've read Fellowship, and I've read The Two Towers, and I'm hoping to finish Return of the King by the time we watch that one. Just so
Awesome.
I have the full
That's what I
experience.
did. I read them before the movies came out, so that was my I had to get through Return of the King before the movie was released.
What about you, Kel? What's
So-
your history with Lord of the Rings?
I feel like a neophyte compared to the two of you because I have not read the books. Full disclosure, like a lot of you, I read Hobbit younger in life. I really enjoyed it. I remember watching the cartoon. I really enjoyed it. It didn't resonate as like the series to me. It was just one of those series. It would be like if I found out Secret of Nim had a book that accompanied it. I probably would have read that too if I had my hands on it. Lord of the Rings was no bigger than The Last Unicorn, Secret of Nim, any of these, like we were discussing these older cartoons. I didn't at that time realize the importance of it. I didn't realize the importance of the cultural touchstone that it was. But later on in life, I decided that after I started, because I started playing D&D in like middle school and in high school, I realized that everybody telling me that all the tropes and character types that I've been used to for all these years all came from this movie, or I'm sorry, from this book series. I was like, oh God, I need to read those. So I went back and I reread Hobbit again in high school. And I was like, oh, this is great. Why did I miss this? Because I was reading fantasy novels all the time, and somehow I just skipped over Lord of the Rings. And then I was like, great. So I pick up Fellowship of the Ring, and I got about 100 pages in, and I was like, I can't fucking do this. This is so fucking slow. And and it's funny coming from somebody that, like, my degree partially is in sociology, and I love sociology. I'm a sociologist at heart in a lot of ways. J.R.R. Tolkien writes like an anthropologist writes. He writes his series as if he's an anthropologist studying a culture of past and explaining it to future generations. He's adding a lot of names. He's adding a lot of lineage. He's telling you a lot about the culture that surrounds it. That's wonderful, and it feels like I'm reading a textbook at times, and that's not as fun to me. I have two different modes for reading, either like reading to learn like that, or reading because I want to escape into a narrative. And Lord of the Rings his writing style was the problem. So I was so thankful when these movies came out. I was like, thank God, somebody like me that I love these kinds of stories, and I've never experienced the Lord of the Rings story because I can't read the fucking books because I can't dig his writing style. It was a wonderful godsend. It was a boon to me because I finally got to experience it. Of course, by the time I saw it, it felt a little tropey, but I had to remind myself, much like us watching like Psycho, that it's tropey because the trope started here. This is where a lot of, not that they began the hero's journey or anything like that, but,
and that's one of the great things about film is it gives people the chance to experience. That's like watching these movies is the same experience that people who read the books when they came out for the first time got. You know what I mean? Like this fantastic, crazy world that's been invented is, before you, and you take it all in. And so the movie gives that to those who, like you, Kelly, who don't like good books, I guess.
And if you're a hardcore nerd and you're a huge fan of the book, then I would think that you're not like the gatekeeping hipster stereotyping going, I liked it before it was cool. No, you want more people to enjoy it. And if you have somebody like me that, like, I'm standing outside the gate saying, let me in, just don't make me read these fucking books. And somebody goes, here you go. And I'm like, thank you. Now, that's the way I look at it. Like, I'm a huge fan of The Expanse. I'm reading the book series right now. I just finished book 5. Fucking great series. But if I met somebody and they're like, you know what? I ain't got the time to read fucking 9 books in the series, but you said there's a TV show? Sure, I'll give it a watch. And then they got hooked on the TV show, I'd be like, hell yeah, awesome. At least you get to experience the story. Maybe you'll read the books later. If not, you got to experience this way. That makes me happy.
One of the interesting things about because there is, I agree, there's kind of big sections of the two that I've read, The Fellowship and The Two Towers, that are a bit sluggish. It's really interesting to me because the Hobbit novel is like story time with Grandpa around the fireplace. It's so like comforting and warm. And the Fellowship starts that way. But a lot like the movie, one of my notes is that we start off so cozy and happy and whimsical in the Shire, and then it just gets dour the further you go. Mm-hmm. And so the writing style becomes more adult in the same book, like, and starts giving all these history lessons and you know, it's just an interesting trick to see. And I think it's intentional in part of it that you go from this whimsy, feel good, happy place to okay, we got to get through this. Kind of is what it starts to feel like.
It's also like some of Tolkien's writing it was so descriptive of like the vistas and the trees and what everything looks like that just translates better into a visual medium where you don't have to spend a page and a half describing the vista because you can see it in 2.2 seconds. So that does help tremendously.
I think that you're onto something, Keith, about the way that it becomes more mature as it goes. Mm-hmm. Well, aside from, you know, the movie starts with 30 minutes of exposition involving, you know, thousands of people getting slaughtered on the screen. So depending on what your definition is, it starts light. It starts with the war of the kingdoms in the Second Age or whatever it was, and we get to see, you know, Sauron completely dominating the armies of men, elves, and dwarves on the field of battle. But either way, when the movie proper starts, when it's not this prologue exposition thing, I feel like the story is in the forced perspective of the Hobbit. Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways, you're seeing things from a Hobbit's point of view. The Hobbit home doesn't feel small. The Hobbit home feels comfortable, and when Gandalf shows up, he feels big. When you see even like little scenes, like when you see Frodo walking up to the pool in Lothlorien, it's at his eye level, and the camera is approaching this pool at eye level or slightly below eye level, so you can't quite see what's in the pool. You see like things from other perspectives. It's not always that way, but it helps you to understand that you're seeing the world from like this childlike race. And also like that childlike quality couples with the fact that he makes it known early on that hobbits are not known in the ways of the world. They don't really go outside of their borders. So you get to experience who are all these people through the eyes of these hobbits. Yes. Like somebody has to explain it to Frodo and Sam who the fuck the Rohirrim are, and that's how we, the audience, learn who they are. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm so glad this movie came out, because it's really good storytelling. Like even the way they do character introductions, wonderful, perfect. You get to see enough of the person where you're like, ooh, who's that? And then they tell you shortly thereafter, and then you're already receptive to the new information because you're curious about this new person, whoever they might be, whether it's Merry and Pip, or the first time you meet Strider, or the elves in Lothlorien, like I was talking about.
And also, everybody is just so beautiful. Like, it is a beautiful cast.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, one of the things that we'll talk about is the alternate casting, and some of the alternate castings might have been considered a little bit more beautiful, and I'm glad that they didn't go with them. Famously, the actor that they had chosen for Aragorn to start. Yeah, he's probably a little prettier than Viggo, depending on your style.
But Aragorn needs to be a little...
He's a little rough
and ready. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got to look like a veteran of wars.
He can't be too pretty. He can't be too pretty.
Yeah.
You can't have him looking like an elf. He can't. Like, you need an elf to look like an elf.
Since you mentioned the opening exposition, that's my first note. So let's get into the movie proper, I think.
That sounds like a plan.
I call it the opening crawl because it kind of does the same thing as a Star Wars opening crawl, and whenever I have an opportunity to relate something to Star Wars, I will take it.
Yep.
It's one of the best pieces of pure exhibition in film, I would say. I'm like already so interested in this story like 30 seconds in, because it sounds great. It sounds like an awesome prequel. Hell, Amazon is making the prequel series of this exposition, like right now. We're in season 2 of Rings of Power or whatever. And I really like it. I like that it's something to set you up. You know, if you can't have an opening crawl, you can do this. I feel it sets the stage very nicely. I usually don't like exposition in films, but if it's front loaded and it has a purpose like this is one of the best.
And it's just so well done. Like, her voice is so perfect in delivering it.
this first scene, I got to tell you that when we were talking about this might be a bit of a long pod, part of the reason why is even to set the stage for this first scene takes so much fucking work. And I want to real quick run down a couple of a couple production notes because that's important to what I'm about to talk about.
Sure.
So this was directed by Peter Jackson, as we all know. He was co-written or screenplay also by Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens. And if anybody has watched like a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, Philippa Boyens is very talkative about her time with the Lord of the Rings. I don't know for sure. I think she's a New Zealander as well.
I believe they all are. Yes.
Yeah. You could hear in all the production staff like New Zealand accents left and right. What do they call Kiwis, right? That's what they call themselves? Yep. Yeah, Kiwi accent everywhere. Hopefully that's not like a slur. That's what they call themselves, right? Just to make sure.
I'm going to Google that right now.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, either way, I'm probably leaving it in. I'll just bleep it out if it's the case.
That would invite so much speculation.
No, it is not.
Thank God.
If you just bleep it and don't say what we're talking about. What the hell did he just call them?
Better. Yeah. They call themselves, right?
Those with Maori heritage prefer not to be called Kiwi, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah, because they're different. Yeah. Because they're different. That's
that was
stay away from the racism. Anyways, so from what I gather in the story, Peter Jackson was so busy throwing a lot of other stuff together because they describe this movie process as laying down railroad tracks as the train is on the track running towards you. So he gave this first scene largely to Philippa, from what I gather, and said, I need you to tell the story about what happened beforehand. And he gave her a list of things that she definitely had to mention, like the elves were immortal, the ring is evil, like all these like basic facts about the world that you have to convey in a matter of like maybe 10 minutes or something like that, however long that intro is. And she tells the story like, oh yeah, that's easy. Tell the 3,000 year history of a world and all the elements of it in like 10 minutes without boring the audience when they're first sitting down for the theater. This is going to be easy peasy. And you're in for a marathon when you sit down and you have 10, 15, 20 minutes, just a pure exposition before we even watch actors like really acting out the scenes. Like our main character, we haven't even met him yet because we got to tell you all about the world for a good half hour. This opening scene, they tried doing it with Frodo, originally Frodo doing the voiceover. Then they tried doing it with Gandalf doing the voiceover. And apparently they really, really liked Gandalf doing the voiceover with Ian McKellen. But that still didn't feel right. Like Gandalf shouldn't be telling this story. And then they decided to pick somebody that would have reasonably been alive and been there. And they decided to go with Galadriel instead. Yeah. And if you notice, the music notes in the background, like their music is going to be a huge part of what we talk about here. The composer being Howard Shore. I'll totally touch on that more as we go. But the music that's playing in the background is the music from the Lothorian, the elves, the other elves, the stuck-up elves that you're not sure if they're good guys or bad guys kind of thing. That's the music that plays at the beginning, which it tells the story of those elves. It's not a good or bad, it's not a major or a minor key song. It's just kind of otherworldly and mysterious. And they have Galadriel speaking over top of it, which that, of course, they probably accompanied that music because they chose Galadriel. But that worked so beautiful because as we go through that entire story and she tells her whole thing, and it ends with, things that should not be forgotten are lost. And then we cut into the credit, the title card for, Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. No, just Lord of the Rings at this point. And the song switches to the Ring theme.
And some things that should not have been forgotten were lost.
It is that piece of music in itself is classic, and I'm going to talk about that as we go. Trust me, I want to talk about the Ring theme, but the way that music just beautifully blends from an elf telling you a story in a dispassionate way with neither happy or sad music underneath it, feeling like a chronicle, and then it goes right into you're hearing the theme of the Ring, which like. I guess I have to say something about that. That the thing of the theme of the Ring, the theme of the beam, is it's basically consists of two things. It's got a chord underlying underneath the melody, the chord is 2 minor chords. So both chords that you're hearing are sad / evil / whatever emotion that you can apply to those minor chords in that instance. And that's the base of the song. That is the functional foundation of the music. Whereas the melody on top is kind of light and mysterious. And it's almost like there's nothing going on here. There's something really cool here. You want to look around the corner and see what this is. Except underneath, you hear this evil foundation underneath it, and the foundation is much stronger. Like, I could play the 2 chords, and there are several times in this movie where the 2 chords of the Ring theme are playing underneath, and just not the top part. And really discerning listeners will pick up on that and go, oh, the power of the Ring is working in the scene. And that's part of what makes this a masterclass, a magnum opus in soundtrack composition, because he took leitmotifs to the fucking highest degree and he weaved them into whole new pieces of work the way he weaves in and out different leitmotifs. And that's why I wanted to, I'm not going to talk about all the music this way, I swear, but the Ring theme felt like it deserves a little bit of extra focus, because that either the high ringing notes that we just mentioned, or that low foundation, one of the 2 of that really comes through in different scenes in different ways. And it tells you the story. Like, you can listen to the soundtrack and you know kind of what's going on if you can identify different characters with different motifs. So. So what are your thoughts about the intro? Like, were you like immediately hooked? Did you think the CGI didn't hold up? Like, what are your thoughts, good and bad?
I mean, I've expressed mine. Before Jamie, I'll let you say your piece in a second. I just want to point out that the scene of Bilbo finding the ring, they reshot like scene for scene for the Hobbit movies. I know the Hobbit movies are their own can of worms to talk about, but I just appreciate a little thing like that.
Yes.
It's kind of interesting going back.
I refuse to acknowledge that existence right now.
I was hooked right from go, like waiting with bated breath just through the whole introduction, because I just think it was masterfully done. Just her tone of voice, the way she tells the story is engaging, but like you said, not too engaged. You don't feel that she necessarily has a part to play in the story at that moment. And it tells so much in such short time. It really does give you the backstory you need to get into this without dragging it on.
It might be the best piece of exposition I've seen in a modern movie.
So possibly. Great job, Philippa.
What a daunting task! You're trying to get soccer moms into a D&D campaign.
Well,
right? Yeah, right.
And like when you're saying like she was told the things she needed to hit on, we're talking. Tolkien has an entire other series, other books that cover all of these different things that are huge volumes of books and notes that he had and languages that he created and all of that to try to condense that into this 20-minute shot, basically, to reel everybody in.
Yeah, unfortunately, not enough, though. According to what I can see with a lot of theory crafters and people that are really deep into the lore of Lord of the Rings and the world of Middle-earth and Sindarin or whatever all these different worlds are called.
Sindarin.
Yeah, there you go. That's the elven language, though. Yes. I don't know. Anyways, like it seems like he left a lot of questions unanswered, and I'm looking at George R. R. Martin and going, "Are you paying attention?
Right.
Do not leave these questions unanswered. Tell us the basic facts of the universe before you go." But I don't know. Maybe is that what makes it incredible? Is even to this day. If you were to go to a Lord of the Rings fan room and say, "Who's Gandalf?" you're going to get a chorus, a wall of noise is going to pour out of those people of what their opinions are. And you know what? All of them might be right from a certain point of view, but even when you break down like the core essence of who Gandalf is, like what his soul was before he came to Ardra or whatever the name of the planet is, like that's a lot of that is up for conjecture, but they really got deep into some of this shit. And I don't know. Part of me loves the fact that these questions will never be answered for sure. But part of me hates the fact that these questions will never be answered for sure. So the scale of Mount Doom gets me every time. Having it on the big screen and actually paying attention reminded me of what it was like to be in the theater to see this. That was fucking incredible. Seeing that huge mountain off in the distance, even you know right away that the scale is going to be off the fucking charts for this movie.
Sauron is intimidating from the jump. Like,
Yeah.
his awesome black spiky armor. One thing that I've always loved is how subtle the ring shrinks when it gets in Isildur's hand.
Yeah.
Like, for my first few viewings of it, I was like, is that a trick of my eyes? Am I actually seeing that? It's such a nice little touch. Like, oh, you're my owner now. Oop,
Yeah.
you know? And it just,
I would hate for it not to fit you, so you must make me fit you now.
Yep. That's one of its magic powers, that it fits the size of any hand that wields it. Speaking of the Eye of Sauron, did you realize that, first off, anybody that's read the book knows that there's no technical Eye of Sauron in the book.
Right.
They're just being metaphorical, saying that
he's watching over everything. Yes,
his attention is in this direction.
yeah, he's interchangeable with the eye.
Yeah, he actually has a physical form in the books. There is a man with legs and arms and a head and stuff like that. Whatever.
And he has spies everywhere and all that good stuff.
So Peter Jackson puts together this story with the Eye of Sauron as this literal eye above the temple or above the Mount Doom and yada yada. And we're like, into filming by a few months or whatever, and he's having a conversation with Christopher Lee, the man that plays Sauron, the starts out as
Saruman.
Sauron. Yeah, sorry. But Christopher Lee is telling him, and Christopher Lee is the kind of person where he's read this book series once a year, every year, his entire life since they came out. So he knows the language. He can quote passages in other languages from the book before he was cast in the movie. So he knows this fucking shit big time. And he's having a talk with Peter Jackson, and he says something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing here, something along the lines of, your choice to go with that eye in the sky was a wonderful choice. That's very stylized. And Peter Jackson says, and it dawned on me that I might have made a huge mistake. And he went back and reread the books and portions and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, fuck, there isn't an eye. He admits now that he was convinced reading the books that there was a literal eye above the tower that was watching people. So this artistic choice of Peter Jackson was him skimming over parts that he didn't want to read as whenever he read these books the first time, and it just kind of stuck in his mind. So.
I think it's a great addition. It works so well as an iconic, identifying, ultimate danger signal. But it also acts as, I've always taken it as, that is Sauron in his incorporeal form. Is he is the eye and Sauron are the same entity or whatever. Right. So it still works.
He's using his magical ways that you find out what they are later to look through those, and that's the projection of the eye that he would use to look through those magical ways.
Right, and so it still works. It doesn't really conflict with the books, but yes, it's even mentioned. I forget what the exact phrasing is, but I think in the same sentence they're talking about the Eye of Sauron and Sauron himself.
It's ever watchful.
Yeah.
I think when I was watching it, I was of two minds, and either one is equally comfortable or uncomfortable place. The first is that the eye is just a metaphor, even when I was watching the movie. It is a psychic projection that you can see if you're in a certain mindset, but if the average person just looks towards Mount Doom, they're not going to see a glowing eye at the top of it. It's not a literal glowing eye.
Sure, you might see it when it's looking at you, right? When you're the subject of its focus.
When you're in the void. Quote unquote.
More that you sense it, and that image is similar to if you were to draw what you're seeing in your mind. That's what you, but not that your eyes are physically seeing an eye 10 feet away from you staring at you now, oh, I see you. No, even the caption, which that's a note I get into at some point. The captions feel superfluous to me. I don't want to know exactly what Sauron is saying. The fact that it's kind of gluttural and you're not quite sure if he's speaking Mordor or if he's, who knows? I don't know. But the other interpretation is that there's a literal fucking eye on the top of this mountain, and it is open 24/7, and it is always looking for humans to kill or for the ring or something like that. And that, imagine walking through Mordor and you always see this glowing eye up above the horizon. It's always where you can see it, and you're always trying to hide behind things. And then imagine the terror that you would feel if all of a sudden it just zoop and
Yeah.
it turned towards you and you're bathed in that orange red firelight. Oh my God. I would shit and piss and fart all over myself. And
I take it as a little of column A and a little of column B.
Right.
You know, like it's maybe
just the shitting and pissing for you. No,
yeah,
no farting?
yeah, no column C for me, thank you. No, it's like I said, where I land on it is kind of a mix of those two. Like it's present, but maybe it's not even. Maybe you aren't aware of it until it focuses on you, sort of thing. I don't know, but I love it, and like it does. It goes a long way to like. I think it's Gandalf almost reaches for the ring to touch it, and you just get that quick flash of like the eye and the burning, and it's like. Right. Okay, it's like it's working. You know, Sauron is aware. Sauron is watching.
It's a great visual representation of the idea that the eye is always aware, the eye is always watching, especially over the ring. It's always looking for the ring, and because you're in a visual medium, you need a visual representation. So it's a great addition, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's iconic. So it's obviously
you can only hear the eye is ever watching so many times before you're like, yeah, I get it. Move on.
yeah. You're physically doing the go on with your hand, rolling your finger at the person.
Yeah, I get it. He's watching. What are we gonna do? So I want to move on to where we actually show up in Hobbiton, and I love that it shows Bilbo writing The Hobbit.
Yes.
If you read the book, you know that the book says it's written by Bilbo Baggins, blah, 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 blah. And it's written, the words that he's writing, the words that he's saying in his head as he's writing them are the same as the book. And it's just such an awesome touch.
Yeah.
And what he's saying is matching up with the words that are on the page in front of him.
Yeah.
Like little details like that where it was such a labor of love. And there are some mistakes here and there, but I think they did a really good job of covering them up.
And that part wasn't in the original.
Oh, it wasn't?
No, that is part of the extended edition.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, it's been a long time since I watched them. So
I really love that edition.
Yeah, and the in the novel, literally the first chapter 1 is concerning hobbits by Bilbo Baggins.
Mm-hmm.
And this is happening 2,500 years in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wait, what?
2,500.
It's the future?
Well, for the beginning of the movie. Like the movie starts out as the first battle, and then well, actually, and then she says 2,005 years later, or however she says, I forget how she puts it, but it's after the fall of Isildur, where he dies in the river and the ring escapes him. And then 2,500 years later. Now, to put that into human history perspective, in the year 500 BC, which is it's 2,524 years ago, but Rome wasn't really a thing yet. The city was a thing, but the empire hadn't even started yet. So it was before the Roman Empire. That's 2,500 years ago from right now, today, or roughly from when you're listening to this, depending on if it's like the year 2100. But you can do your own math if you're that far advanced. So yeah, that's quite a culture. And that's one of the hard things that I have watching these TV shows or these movies or anything like that, where they have these huge time gaps, especially in fantasy worlds. And this is like the little bit of anthropologist in me, is that why are these cultures not advancing in any way? Why are all of these cultures in a quagmire bullshit? They're monolithic and they're just kind of stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Rohirrim are very similar to maybe the Dunedain people that were in the land 2,000 years ago, but they're largely the same. And nobody has invented a printing press. Nobody has invented nobody's discovered gunpowder. Like what's going on with the world?
The Dark Ages. Their Dark Ages was really long.
They have nobody working on inventions. They have nobody working on chemistry. They have nobody trying to advance science in any way. Like, do they even know what science is? So in some ways, these worlds are so wonderful to me, but like imagine 2,500 years with not a single scientific discovery. Wow, what's going on?
Somebody's working on chemistry because they have the fireworks that can make dragons. We don't have that.
But that seems like it's more magic than it is.
Well, here's the question. Do you need science if you have access to magic?
But you would think that somebody would at some point. Science would just kind of happen at some point. We do science all the time as children. Like, I'm going to throw a ball at my dog and see what happens. Oh, it ran away. I did an experiment, and I wrote a hypothesis down in my mind, and I wrote down the results, and they didn't align.
And I know it's still a very long time, but the first War of the Ring or whatever, scoured a lot of Middle Earth, so there was rebuilding. But no, I understand completely. Like in 2,500 years, something should have advanced beyond swords, chainmail, and
Maybe it's just like
Yeah, I do the same thing with Star Wars. That their spaceships in Star Wars or Old Republic are almost identical to the spaceships in A New Hope, and I'm like, okay, whatever. I roll my eyes 'cause it's like whatever. It doesn't ruin it for me, but part of me is going, that's not logic. That's not how human beings or just living creatures, as far as we can tell, that's not how it works. Once you become sentient, you start doing science. That's what happens.
It's possible that you just uncovered the whole rabbit hole of it's like the village, and once you leave this area, everything's progressed. But in this area,
yeah, the hobbits. Concerning hobbits, we've never really gone outside our village. They walk outside, and they're next to an expressway.
Middle Earth is under a turnpike in Newark. You know.
So concerning hobbits, we're at the Shire. The Shire theme musically, I don't really need to go into that too much, but very comfortable, very happy.
Very Celtic.
Yeah, very Celtic, very, very rural. And there's a small little moment where things get a little bit sad in the song. Like there's a little like bridge or chorus or something that has that little bit of minor key. And then it comes right back to the happiness, and it's very happy-go-lucky. And the reason why I bring it up is because, again, this whole thing is a masterclass in leitmotifs. When we are in Mordor, spoiler, when we're in Mordor in Book 2 and 3, and Sam is trying to cheer up Frodo, you're going to hear the Ring theme underneath with a light playing of the Shire theme on a single tin whistle or penny whistle on top. And that reminds you, that gives you just that little glint of home. And maybe the theme starts, but it doesn't finish because Frodo is so under the pull of the ring, he can't really remember what the Shire looks like. He kind of remembers, but beautiful music moments. But this is where the Shire theme comes from. And
Gandalf is singing "The Road Goes Ever On" as he's coming into the picture, which again is a lovely nod to the book series. And that and the book being written by Bilbo, to me, is like a warm hug to the book readers, to the people who read them or came to the story that way, telling them that, like, it's going to be okay. The person that has this movie knows what's going on. They're going to take good care of your book for you. You will be okay, you know? Because when you're going from book to seeing a movie, a lot of times you're like, this is not going to be good.
I'll go so far to expand that as the whole opening with the Shire is like a warm hug. It's just... like, I want to be there. I have the soul of a hobbit, pretty much, you know.
I think we all do, right? I think they're supposed to be, like, well-meaning humans.
Yeah.
I want to live there. I want to live in Hobbiton. That
and they fucking built the Shire. They built the Shire on a farm.
And you can go visit the Shire still.
An actual set that is all the hobbit houses built into the side of the hill. It's like, oh my God.
I think it's an Airbnb now.
Well, I mean, and think about the commitment that was made financially to put this together.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when they finally, like, was it New Line Cinema or whatever is the one that picked it up? Like, a little bit of the history, when Peter Jackson was writing this and putting this all together, like, they were at a part where they started pitching it to different studios, and they were getting a lot of cold shoulders, and people were not, because people were realizing how expensive this could be and how easy it could be to fuck this up. And one of the stories goes that when Peter Jackson walked into New Line Cinema to do the pitch for it, the person that he was pitching for, I forget his name, but he's notoriously very deadpan in the face, and nobody can ever read what he thinks. And Peter and Philippa, I think one of his screenplay writers, did it together. And afterwards, they were sitting there thinking, we don't know how well this goes across. And when he originally posed it, he said, there are 3 movies that I want to do. There's The Hobbit as one movie, and then Lord of the Rings Part 1 and Lord of the Rings Part 2, and do the entire trilogy of books in those 2 movies. And he says, but what I'm coming to you for is Lord of the Rings Part 1 and Lord of the Rings Part 2. We'll do The Hobbit later. And the production team, after they heard this whole speech, they sat there for a minute, and he goes, no, that's not going to work. And there was a pregnant pause where everybody thinks that he's getting turned down. He says, you're not going to be able to do it in 2 movies. You'd have to do it in 3. And they're like, Okay, awesome. Let's do it in 3. Yes, that's what we meant all
Twist
along.
my arm.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We can turn this into where do we put the lines? Oh, we just go off the fucking books that we're basing everything off of. Okay. Aside from a couple minor differences, like the end of this movie is the beginning of book 2, that kind of thing. Yeah, the Shire, that cost, think about that. Like the budget for this was $93 million reported. And of course, that doesn't take into account a lot of marketing costs. So it's probably closer to about $200 million when all was said and done. Whew.
And I did check. You absolutely can stay in Hobbiton.
Oh,
you can stay there. How much does it cost?
Airbnb.
Does it have it in US dollars?
I do not see any dollar signs at this point. So, but it is on Airbnb.
That sounds amazing. One day.
Right?
So one thing as a movie watcher instead of a book reader, it always strikes me that there's more music in the books than there is in the movie. Like in the sense of our characters sing more, and there's more like lyrics and stuff like that. How is that? Are the songs fun to read? Are they like cringe? Like what is the song? What are the songs like?
Here's the thing. If you're reading them, it's kind of awkward. So I get that from like years and years. But I'm quote unquote reading them via audiobook, and it's read by Andy Serkis, the voice of Gollum. And he does a unique voice for every character, which helps tremendously in that aspect.
Love it.
But he sings the songs, and it makes it's a nice little break from narrative.
Does he have a good singing voice?
Sometimes he sings it in the voice of the character who's singing it.
Right. And not every character has a good singing voice.
Right. So sometimes it's like some oaf,
That's so cool.
Yeah,
I had no idea. Like I knew Andy Serkis did it, but I didn't know he actually like kind of sang the songs. I'm convinced that if I ever try it again, I will probably do it on an audiobook and listen to it on my breaks at work or something. But so Gandalf gets to town. There's all the memes that are already pouring on the screen.
Yeah.
Like we could literally name this the Lord of the Memes, and that is almost tropish at this point because it's just this whole movie, and that goes to show you how many people watched it.
Yep.
Because we all immediately know when we see Gandalf nodding and smiling, we know that.
Yeah.
They say every frame a painting, every frame a meme in this movie. I think one of the only other movies that's as ubiquitous with memes is The Phantom Menace. Probably like every scene from both of these movies is a meme in some form or another.
Well, it's the meme generation, and that's what they grew up with. So it kind of makes sense.
I also want to be labeled a disturber of the peace. I want people to say that when I come to town.
That feels like an official title, right?
Yeah.
That's not just him saying random words.
Jamie,
it's like, no,
Disturber
your
of the
official
Peace.
title around town is Disturber of the Peace. Wizard fireworks are amazing. That's Jesus Christ. I want to go to a fireworks show in real life that looks like wizard fireworks. That's amazing. And this is where I'm really taken aback by the way they're doing their character intros, because we see Merry and Pip for the first time. And how do we meet them? With them being playful and going and doing things they shouldn't be. And Merry, for a moment, is trying to be a voice of reason and say, we really shouldn't do this, Pip. But it doesn't take much convincing for him to be like, all right, let's go do it. Let's go do it. And they...
Yeah, so you're Merry and Keith's Pip today.
I mean, maybe a little bit. We'll see how well that works. But hopefully it doesn't end with something blowing up in my face, like me using slurs for any group of people unintentionally.
Damn Kiwis!
We didn't bring in interspecies erotica and slurs in the same episode when we're doing a classic like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Gandalf, in these early scenes, his playful energy reminds me of Falkor from the Neverending Story, the movie.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
I can see it. Yeah.
It's same energy, protective, but playful,
The squinting of the eyes when laughing and shaking the head. And
and his wink every once in a while, and it feels like a very playful old man wink. It doesn't feel weird.
So speaking of Gandalf, perfect casting. Maybe now's a good time to sort of dive into the alternate casting stuff, because I think that's an interesting conversation.
Oh, Jesus.
And I feel it stems from Gandalf, because moi, chef's kiss, I can't imagine anyone else being Gandalf. Like, he locked the role in.
You've talked about it in a previous episode, but somebody else was literally offered the role before they even considered Ian McKellen, and that was our pal of the pod, Sean Connery. The broken man from League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
I've lost friends, and much more and I'm not the man I once was.
That never acted again.
This is what led to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, he passed up the Matrix and then he passed up this, and he was like, "Get me in one of these fucking nerd movies."
And now that I know more about Sean Connery from doing all that, like, so Sean Connery goes on the record saying it's okay to beat your wife because sometimes women need to learn the hard way, shit like that, like horrible misogynistic shit. And Ian McKellen is a gay man that is like dancing at pride parades and stuff like that. And I'm like, thank God you picked the right choice in this. Like, I want to like Gandalf at all possible, please. And for a lot of people, it introduced us to Ian McKellen. That was his first big thing, really. So
I had known him as Magneto, which came out first, I believe.
Yeah, so the other people that were considered for Gandalf are Sean Connery, like I said, Patrick Stewart, which I think he would have done a very cool Gandalf. It would have been very different than Ian McKellen, but it would have been he would have been a little bit more intense.
I feel like he would have made a decent Saruman. I could see Patrick Stewart.
It would have been it's like the two Dumbledores in the Harry Potter series. Patrick Stewart versus Ian McKellen here. I can see that.
Different energy, but similar. Both have this kind, fatherly kind of feel to them. So like, and it makes sense. They're both best friends in real life. So they probably have a lot of mannerisms they share between the two of them. And so like, I think Patrick Stewart would have been a good choice. I don't know if he would, as much as I love Star Trek, I don't know if Patrick Stewart would have been better than Ian McKellen at this role. And even Patrick Stewart, if he were here, he probably would say something similar like, "Oh, I give it my all," but he's masterful. He's iconic in this role. How could anybody do it differently? The other people considered for the role, Sam Neill. You remember him from Jurassic Park?
Yeah,
he played Merlin, so that's probably why he was in consideration.
Yeah, which I like. I actually had that on VHS, the Merlin series made for TV.
Which he was great in that, but I can't see him as Gandalf.
No, I don't like that one. Richard Harris, the original Dumbledore from the Harry Potter movies. Obvious old man with a beard, wizened. British accent, all the above, sure.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that Dumbledore is based off Gandalf, so.
Yeah, but the only problem is Richard Harris at that point, age-wise, I don't know if he could have handled a lot of the, you know what I'm saying? They would have had to bring in a stunt double for a lot of scenes, but they did it with Jonathan Rhys Davies, so whatever. The last person on the list is our man Sam, that actor's father, Sean Astin's father, John Astin, who played... Gomez Adams from the Addams Family.
Yep.
Yeah, he.
I cannot see that. I love John Adams, but I cannot see him as Gandalf at all.
Yeah. I think it would have been interesting. I always see him in as these like kind of comedic roles most of the time. So to see him in a very serious role, I think would have been, and obviously part of the reason why I think he threw his name into the hat because he was such a huge Lord of the Rings fan that that's when you know you want people that are already fans of the franchise that are like, I want to do this justice. Like they keep it's revered and honored to them. So that's the kind of people you want involved in your production if you can, as long as they're not like super hardcore and they're going to be mad if you don't do a certain thing they like.
I'm glad they went with Ian because he's like, I just want to sit there and smoke Hobbit weed with him. He's such a cool... Gandalf is such a chill fucking dude. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
Instantly likable.
Other alternative casts. So let's talk about this real quick. The alternative cast for the series. So I already told you Gandalf. There was only one other name that really got thrown around a lot for Frodo, and that was Jake Gyllenhaal. How do you say his last name?
Oh my God. Thank God that they didn't go that route.
The few things I've seen him in, I've liked him in, but he doesn't have that boyish quality that Elijah Wood does. Elijah Wood, classic. He's also in this role. I can't imagine anybody else in
an
it.
asshole.
Oh, is he?
He's an asshole. Like, oh yeah, he's an absolute asshole. And so, like, there's so many of these names that you're throwing out that's like you could have picked the asshole, but you went with the nice one that people can love forever.
What's the T on Jake Gyllenhaal? What is he an asshole?
He was dating an underage Taylor Swift when she was very underage,
and he was much older.
Okay. He's probably so you're saying he's a libertarian.
And he's just like he's also like he's not known for being kind to people on set. He's kind of he's
a Joe Pesci. He's the Joe Pesci of the Hobbits. Jake Gyllenhaal is the Joe Pesci of the Hobbits.
Real Christian Bale, that guy.
You don't fucking understand what it's like working with actors. That's what that is.
So other characters, Aragorn, they picked quite a few different people to play Aragorn, and so far as they actually hired and filmed scenes with Stuart Townsend.
Yeah.
Which
another famous asshole.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of Stuart Townsend, and he's got that. He looks like Joffrey in personality and vibe. Are you familiar with who we're talking about, Keith?
I'm looking up a picture.
He was in
yeah.
Queen of the
He
Damned.
was in A League of
Okay.
Extraordinary Gentlemen. He played Dorian Gray.
Dorian Gray. He's got that smarmy, sarcastic
thank you.
dickhead. He looks like Jared Leto. He's a Jared Leto persona, kind of. You know, he's that same vibe.
Not into it at all. Yeah.
And seeing the pictures of him as Aragorn, they don't look right. It doesn't. He looks too young. He looks too baby faced. And Aragorn, like we were saying, he's supposed to have like a veteran look to him. He's supposed to look slightly grizzled. He's supposed to look.
He's a fucking ranger. He's living out in the woods for years and years.
He's supposed to look smelly and stinky and not like his hair is teased.
Yeah.
The other people that were considered for Aragorn are Daniel Day-Lewis, which I think he is a super interesting choice.
He was one of our choices for my sister in my casting.
He would have been amazing as Aragorn.
Yeah.
Anything you put Daniel Day-Lewis on, if he's interested in it, he's gonna give you an iconic role. It might not even be what you expected going into it, but it's gonna be something amazing. So that would have been super interesting.
And we'd be like, "Oh, you remember that scene where he takes out that straw and sticks it into Gollum's milkshake?" And he's like, "I drink your milkshake."
Imagine what Gollum's milkshake tastes like.
Like putrefied fish. Yeah.
Fish guts, little chunks of sand.
I'm glad
the other people considered. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm glad we got Vigo, but I haven't heard the other choices yet. So,
you'll still stick with Vigo. He's the best choice out of the bunch because the other two choices are Nicolas Cage. Seriously, I'm not even making that up. And Russell Crowe.
Yeah, no, Vigo is definitely the way to
Russell
go.
Crowe would have been interesting, but he's coming off of the Gladiator fame and stuff like that at this point, I think. So that's what they
Russell
were
Crowe has the right look.
Yeah,
I'm not a big fan of his acting and stuff, but he has the right look.
I can see it. I'm not a fan, but I can at least see him in the role.
There's an alternate reality where Russell Crowe plays Aragorn, and we're all sitting here talking about how he's so perfect for the role we can't imagine anybody else in it. I think.
I've never felt that Russell Crowe was perfect for any role I've seen him in.
Like Gladiator. He was wonderful in Gladiator.
I think he was great for his role in South Park when he showed up fighting around the world. Yep,
that was a great one for him.
So the other person they were looking at possibly for Samwise Gamgee is James Corden.
No! Oh my god, I'm so glad that didn't happen. Again, another famous asshole. Do you see, like, this whole movie is a choice between assholes and good people.
Oh, trust me, when we get to the end of this, there is an alternative casting for this movie that I'm doing the no thank you face at. Like, no thank you. But there's some of the choices that I think would have been super fucking cool if they would have had the balls to run with it. So Boromir, the other two names that were in the running for Boromir are Bruce Willis and Liam Neeson.
I could see Liam, I think.
Yep.
Bruce Willis was trying hard. From what I gathered, Liam Neeson was brought up in the rooms by the people. Bruce Willis was throwing his name into it, like, please give me a chance to play this role.
I can see Bruce doing it. It would be I think it would be less subtle.
And it makes me value his involvement differently when I know that he's going, please.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay, you have a drive. So now it makes me go, what did Bruce Willis's Boromir look like? That could have been really fucking cool, you know?
Still glad we got Sean Bean.
Yeah, Sean Bean, or Sean Bon, however you say it.
Or the Master of Death.
Yeah.
I'm going to end with the two that I think are the weirdest alternative choices. There are only three left that I have. So the first one, Galadriel would have been, instead of Cate Blanchett, it would have been Lucy Lawless from Xena and Battlestar Galactica. And anybody that's just seen Xena or just touch-toned against Xena might go, I don't know about that. But I got to tell you, as somebody that's seen her in other stuff, i.e. Battlestar Galactica, she's a good actor. She knows her shit. She could be good.
In a lot of things. She is really good. I like her.
Yeah, she's not just a pretty face. She's good.
Yeah. I think she's a little too fit, though, for an elf, you know?
I think them focusing on her face a lot would have been I'm not even trying to make comment on her body, just more like her face is so, like, when you get a close in, there are some scenes in Battlestar Galactica where she's like standing over something that's reflecting her image on her kind of thing. And just the way her face looks is so perfect that it feels otherworldly. Whereas Cate Blanchett is very angular and very elven in that way. So, I mean, both wonderful. I think, again, this is one of those alternative casting choices. I think we could have had a really interesting choice with this other person. And the last person, this is the one that I really think is super interesting, and you all might laugh. I don't know. But Elrond, played by Hugo Weaving, the original idea was to cast David Bowie.
I would have loved that.
Yeah, that sounds cool. He's very elf-like.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a
That would
David
have been
Bowie
amazing.
fan of his music, so I'm a little biased, but like, damn, right? Like,
I'm a fan of his Jareth. So like it would be very Jareth-like.
He's been pretty great at acting in every role I've seen him in. So
Mm-hmm.
especially when he's playing something otherworldly. Like, he's not very good at pretending to be human. But
Right.
when he's pretending to be something not human, it works with him. He already
Because
looks
he's not
fucking
human.
elven and weird and alien and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Peter Jackson shot it down himself and said that whenever you take an iconic character and combine it with an iconic celebrity, you have a high chance for it to go really
Yeah.
poorly.
yeah, that's true.
And I'm like, okay.
Also, like it would have really stolen. I feel like he would have been overshadowing. It would have been like David Bowie's in this movie, as opposed to
and
this
David
movie.
Bowie would have been acting in a way that would have drawn maybe more attention to him than Elrond really needs
Right.
in a lot of those scenes. Like, we don't because Elrond is an exposition monkey. He just pushes the cart forward
Yeah.
a lot of times.
Right.
He doesn't really do much until like the third movie, and even then, all of his hard work is done off camera. So
That's what you think till we watch the extended edition, and it's all Elrond.
in an alternative cast, we have Jake Gyllenhaal as Frodo, Sean Connery as Gandalf, Stuart Townsend as Aragorn, James Corden as Samwise Gamgee, Bruce Willis as Boromir, Lucy Lawless as Galadriel, and David Bowie as Elrond. Oh, and I forgot one last other one, because this one I also think would be interesting. But Arwen, the other person that they were considering for Arwen was Helena Bonham Carter.
No, I don't know. I feel like Liv Tyler really has the elfish
Right.
look.
I agree. And I don't think that Helena Bonham Carter does. She is a very great actress and she's beautiful, but I would see her more as a hobbit.
Yeah,
I'm a
Maybe
little
a
bit more
dwarf.
forgiving to Helena than the two of you are, probably. I will agree on one instance that even by this time, Helena was looking a little bit older. So she was looking like probably in her mid 30s, maybe early 40s kind of thing. She's still gorgeous, but the elf is supposed to have a timeless quality to them. And Arwen is young for an elf. So she's supposed to look very almost like ageless, but teen-like in my mind.
Yeah.
Like, she's supposed to look very, very young. And
Kind of like Legolas.
yeah, Liv Tyler pulls off that very young look, but has a little bit of wisdom behind her eyes. Helena Bonham Carter would have been very interesting, and I think that it still would have been very successful with her at that part. But yeah, so yeah, that's our alternative cast.
I'm glad that we have the cast that we got.
Me
I
too.
think almost everyone kills it.
Yeah,
Yep. And you don't have like 24 years later now. We don't have problematic people yet. So that's always a good sign.
and the cast themselves, from all accounts, they really, really got along super
Oh my
well.
gosh, yes.
They got matching tattoos that almost everybody in the at least everybody in the Fellowship, aside from Jonathan Rhys Davies, got a matching tattoo. And
Of the number
is it-
9 in Elvish.
Yep, the number 9 in Elvis, because there are 9 members of the Fellowship. And in his place, in Jonathan Rhys Davies' place, the stunt double for Gimli went in. And funny enough, like they don't straight up say this, but they allude to it in a million different ways. They spent more time with the stunt double than they did with Jonathan Rhys Davies anyways. Jonathan Rhys Davies would show up for a few close-up scenes and a few scenes, but most of their boots on the ground training and action work and long distance scenes and all that were done with the stunt double. So they became super close friends with him. And if you ask any member of the cast, they consider the stunt double for Jonathan Rhys Davies to be a main member of their cast. He might not have gotten paid as well as they did, but to them, he's equal footing as Aragorn.
So
in the cast.
This might be a controversial statement, and it sounds a lot worse than I intended. I feel like Frodo might be the weakest character portrayal to me in the entire shebang. It's still fantastic, don't get me wrong, and it's 100% to a T the character. That is how the character of Frodo is written. It's kind of a mixture of hopefulness and wistfulness and saccharine, but it's just, I don't know. I mentioned
There's not a lot of development with Frodo.
No,
Frodo doesn't develop much.
right, and it's constantly. I mentioned this before, but there's only so many times I can see Elijah Wood do a surprised look that slowly turns into a head tilted OU smile, and then I'm like checked out and like, okay, I don't need to see that again. And that's like his go-to. That's the go-to Frodo classic, you know.
His crying scenes. I'm assuming his tears weren't added with CGI, but his eyes are so emotive.
Yes,
that's the thing about Elijah Wood. His eyes are so emotive, and you needed. I mean, you think about it. What is Frodo's role in the movie or in the story? Like, obviously, he's an analog for PTSD and somebody coming home from war, and a lot of like, serious talk. I get it. He's got real motivations and real world analogs and stuff like that. But functionally, in the movie, his job is just to get the shit beat out of him for 3 fucking stories. And that's all that happens.
And keep moving forward.
Every like pained or sick or troubled look, I cannot help it, but the way Elijah Wood emotes, and he's a great actor, he's a good face actor. It happens so frequently, and every time it looks like he is busting a massive nut. It doesn't look like distress.
I knew exactly where you were going with it before you even started.
Oh God, I'm so glad you said that, because I have a very similar feeling. I feel like every time he's playing with the ring, that's an analog for him masturbating, because it looks like he's touching the ring really lightly, and he's like, and I'm like, bro, this doesn't feel very comfortable. You're in a fucking bar and you're touching your ring in a very suggestive way. But it's pretty bad that we both found different times where Frodo is having an orgasm on screen, in our opinion.
Is it bad, or is it very telling of what you guys look for?
I wasn't looking. For the record, I was not looking for Frodo having an orgasm when I sat down to watch this movie.
Maybe Elijah Wood's his sexuality is so powerful that he can't contain it.
There you go.
And it comes through in his emotiveness.
His role is to get the shit beat out of him for 3 stories. So, like, all he's got to be is likable enough where you feel bad that bad things happen to him.
100%.
He's what's his name? Chief O'Brien in Star Trek. He's in 2 different TV shows, and all he does is bad things happen to him. Anytime you see Chief O'Brien in an episode, you're like, oh God, what are they going to do to him this time? And that's Frodo every time he shows up on screen. But that's part of the thing too, that like, as somebody that I was not familiar with the story, so I watched these in the movies for the first time I was experiencing it. And by the end of the first movie, I was like, okay, they're going to do a bunch of fake outs with Frodo, obviously. They already did like 4 in this movie alone. Times where you're like, oh my God, Frodo's going to die. And the elves are singing a cappella and everything's slow-mo. And you're like, oh no, Frodo. And then he's fine. And then that happens again. And then he's fine. And it happens again. And he's fine. And I'm like, okay, I get it. So by the second movie, like when he falls into the fucking water and everybody's like, oh my God, he's going to die. And I'm like, no, he's not. There's a whole nother movie after this. There's no way that he's going to die now. So that's the bad thing about Frodo constantly being in dire straits, that I'm just like, whatever. I don't believe it anymore. I'm interested. I want to see what happens, but I don't feel fear for Frodo dying at any point. But anyways, so
back to the Shire.
They are still in the Shire. Yes, we are still within the first 30 minutes of the movie.
This is gonna be a 2-parter. I'm calling it now.
So we're at the Shire, and Bilbo does his 111th birthday party, which so many parts of this are so difficult to portray. Or to like for me, if I were to try to like quote him, I would have to practice beforehand.
Because Bilbo is a dramatic bitch, which is one of my notes.
I don't know half as much as you, half as well as you deserve.
That's my favorite line. Yeah, that's great. I love it.
God.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to practice that so that I can say it in public, but I know that I would have to practice it before I would trust myself saying it in public.
It's like both a compliment and an insult at the same time. It's such a great phrase to say.
And it leaves everybody confused because they're not sure if it's a compliment or an insult. In that scene where Bilbo is telling the story of The Hobbit, and he's telling it to the little children, it's a small cameo that Peter Jackson's daughter is in that scene. And I think her son and his son is too, but he's not as focused by the camera.
Right.
The camera really focuses on the little girl, because that little girl that the camera kind of pans in on a little bit.
Oh, that's his daughter.
She's so adorable.
Yeah, she's so fucking cute. Like all the kids, all their reactions are adorable. Like when he makes a sudden noise and they all kind of jump back a little bit. Oh, it's so cool. It makes you love these hobbits, even though Bilbo is a little annoying. He's a good guy. He just wants to tell stories and get stoned and eat cupcakes, you know?
He's a dramatic bitch.
Like, so you want to get stoned, eat pastries, and tell stories to people? I totally get that way of life.
And do it in the showiest way possible.
He says on a podcast. So Bilbo stands up in front of his family and he announces his goodbye. And in the extended edition, we got that extra scene with Frodo and Bilbo where he kind of tells him that he's proud of him without fully telling him, which that felt weirdly reticent. Is that a normal quality for Bilbo in the books that he doesn't want to tell Frodo that he loves him?
Not particularly, no.
No.
It just seemed like an odd choice. Like, why wouldn't Bilbo embrace it and be like, Frodo, my boy, you're a good lad. You know, like,
I think it's because the ring had its power over him and it was starting to turn.
It's also he wants to disappear literally, and he doesn't want to have a goodbye, you know, and that's kind of like his way of saying goodbye. So it's maybe a little more stunted and difficult than just a normal conversational tone of telling that to someone.
Yeah, okay, I totally get that. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, I did feel that longing. Like, tell him you love him. Like, tell him you're proud of him. Tell him, because obviously Frodo looks up to you. He thinks the world of you. He wants you to like him. So give him that before you leave. You know.
You mentioned some of the special effects not holding up for you, which I'm in disagreement. I think they held up pretty damn well. There's a couple of, I think, like maybe the cave troll. I was like, okay, that's 2000 CGI.
I still thought that held up.
It holds up really well, in my opinion. I was able to actually clock it, and I can see the outlines of how it's inserted. You know, that sort of thing. But
that's my complaint, is that I could see it. But I'll get into it. Go ahead, make your point.
This isn't even a CGI thing. I just wish there was a little more when they're showing invisible Bilbo go to his house. You see the gate open. Great touch. Then the camera follows up the stairs. Gosh, I really want the grass there to ruffle or a stone to shift somehow, because they're just faking it. You know, you're walking upstairs, and then the Hobbit door, the door to his house, opens. But I feel it really needs something when he's going up the steps to signify the footfalls. And I don't know, maybe I'm nitpicking, but that really stands out to me harshly for some reason.
So I want to clarify my position on that. First off, I will point out one little film blooper, kind of. During the scene where Bilbo is giving his speech, there is a cake to his right, and they light the candles on fire. Well, the actor was going so many takes into it because he didn't like the original couple takes or whatever, so they were doing multiple takes of this. And by the time they found a take that they really liked, the cake had caught fire, and it was burning on the table to his right, and everybody was like seeing this, but they didn't want to stop him because he was really on a roll. It was a really good take. They let him finish. They kept it in the movie. So if you ever watch when Bilbo is giving his speech, the whole right side of his face is bright orange because not too many feet to his right, the whole cake is just burning to death. It was just made out of polystyrene. It wasn't a real cake. It was just made out of fucking foam.
I heard about that.
It was
That's
burning
funny,
up like, yeah. But to clarify my stance on the CGI in this movie, it's not that I don't like the CGI. For the most part, what I was saying is that it does still hold up, but it's so much more noticeable now. And it might have been due to the fact that we were watching it like in 1080p or 4K or whatever the fuck it was. But watching it on a big screen with really high def, I can clearly see when something CGI is about to happen ahead of time. Like the old days, back in the day when you would watch a movie in the late 80s or early 90s, if somebody was going to put on an invisibility cloak or an invisibility ring, you could tell as soon as that scene started, at least that camera angle, because they would be lit differently than other things in the scene. Right. It was just a realistic, it just what, you know, how light works. It's almost impossible to recreate 100%.
Yeah.
And that was the case here. As soon as Bilbo's on stage and he's giving his speech, I see that bright orange glow on the side of his face. And then it cuts back to the audience. And the camera comes back to Bilbo, and he's lit wildly differently. And I'm like, oh, he's going to put the ring on now. I can tell because he looks different than everything else around him. Just a touch. Yeah. So it was like, it wasn't that the CGI and all the effects didn't hold up. It's that nowadays, in year of our Lord 2024 or beyond, I can see the strings a lot more now. When they're running across the bridge in Bazadul or whatever the fucking place is, I can tell that those are like really good animated PS3 characters or something. Like they look good for the time, especially, but I can tell those aren't real fucking people. Just like next time you see one of those faraway scenes where they're running across, just lean forward and look at the screen and you'll see, oh yeah, it's a little computer model.
You know, what's kind of funny about it is the cave troll looks remarkably similar to the Resident Evil 4 giant monster thing that you fight. Anybody who played Resident Evil 4 will know what I'm talking about. I'll throw you a picture, which is clearly inspired by this. I would say. Let me find a picture just so you can see it. El Gigante is the name of the creature.
El Gigante. Hey, it's
well, they're in a Spanish. They're in a Spanish village, So, but
so it's just the giant.
Here I'm throwing it in the chat just so you can see.
Oh yeah,
it's like exactly that thing almost,
And this is a little bit better graphics than
right. Well, it had this is from the remake, so that's gonna
so PS5 and
yeah.
Lord of the Rings is PS3 era graphics.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, it wasn't the moments where like when he puts his ring on and he goes through the door and stuff like that. It wasn't flawless. Now I can see it from different eyes. When I saw it the first time, I was like, "This is flawless. This looks perfect." Now older, I look back and I'm like, it's not flawless. I'd still give it like an 8.5 out of 10. You know what I'm saying? Like it's still really good. It's just the effects aren't quite as good as they used to be. But so he runs away. He has this whole interaction with Gandalf where he keeps forgetting the ring. He does.
He's not forgetting.
I keep it.
Yeah,
but I mean,
the ring is possessed.
Sometimes it feels like it's genuine that he's like, because there are times where it seems like he's even caught himself off guard. Like, oh no, it's still in my pocket. How did?
And I think that's the ring's influence because the ring changes you. So
the ring knows it has better odds with Bilbo than it does with fucking Gandalf.
Right.
It's also a very close metaphor to addiction. The ring things. Like I meant to flush my baggie down the toilet. Right. I intended to. I was gonna do it. I was gonna get rid of it, and I'm going cold turkey. So yeah, I got rid of it. Oh wait, no, my baggie is still right here in my pocket.
Well, even as far as my drinking days, I would say somebody would say, "Are you drunk today?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not drunk today." Have you had any drinks? Yeah, I've only had like 5. Oh, wait, I guess I am, so yeah, I get it.
The first time previously when Gandalf entered, I want to mention this just because I have a note. Him hitting his head on the rafters is like a laugh out loud, because the noise he makes, it seems really painful.
It was real.
It was real. That's why. Yeah.
That's great. I love how many actors hurt themselves within these movies, and they kept that in the take.
Yeah, there's a
pretty
lot
much
of
every single
in
time they got injured. It's in the take.
So that's great because he's fucking with the chandelier, right? That's part of the script. Is he's like trying not to knock down, and he turns around, thunks his head, and goes, "Ooh!" So if that was real, that
was
fantastic.
real.
Yep, it was.
And Ian McKellen, it was his idea. He's like, "You've got to leave that in the movie," So
when Bilbo on this second time where they're in the house, when Bilbo is, after all, why not? Why shouldn't I keep it? Gandalf does the D&D 5e spell thaumaturgy.
Yeah.
Which is, I have the bullet points from Roll20 right here. Your voice booms up to 3 times as loud as normal for 1 minute. You cause flames to flicker, brighten, dim, or change color for 1 minute. You cause harmless tremors in the ground for 1 minute. As soon as the first time seeing that scene, I was like, oh, he's doing that. He's doing the D&D spell.
Or the D&D spell was written after reading that scene in the book.
Right, 100%. And I love it because it's such a wizardly thing. Like his stature gets bigger, the lights dim, and he's Bilbo Baggins, like commanding attention.
Yeah. And that's the classic of like you see the difference between power gamers and role players and D&D. The power gamers would go, "That's such a worthless spell. It doesn't even do any damage." Where any role player is going, "Oh my god, the chaos I could cause with that spell."
Right.
In a throne room or in a crowded tavern or whatever, like I can cause mass hysteria if I wanted to. Anyways, so yeah, that whole scene is incredible. Such a subtle way that they do the lensing and stuff like that, but he's imposing, and then he immediately becomes very kind and congenial right afterwards. "I'm trying to help you." Like, such a fatherly figure. And then finally, Bilbo lets go of the ring, and they added the effect where they put a magnet underneath the wood, a very strong magnet, so that when the ring hit the ground, it wouldn't bounce at all.
Yep.
To show the weight of the ring. And
exactly.
I noticed it the first time I watched the movie, and it has stuck with me ever since. The way that ring lands on the ground and just sucks right. It does not bounce at all. It's heavier than its weight really shows you.
And they accentuate that with that sound effect that plays when it drops too. It's a very hearty.
The weight of the ring is literal and figurative, and it tells you that right away. Now you've already seen, like, you know that the ring is evil, and you don't know what it does, but you see what it's fucking doing to Bilbo, that he has these moments where he's acting fucking weird and evil, and then you see the ring drop, and it's just clunk on the ground. It's like, oh, that feels wrong. That feels fey. I don't want to touch that,
I love how Gandalf refuses to touch it.
Yep.
He lets Frodo
He puts
put
it-
it in the envelope for him in his
Yep.
hand and touches it with the tongs, but Gandalf never actually touches it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful little a wizard who knows, and obviously feels the temptation. I
Right.
think he even says it at one point. He's like, "Do not tempt me," or whatever.
Yes. Yep. He does.
And so it's clear that I should not be fucking with this
Right.
thing. You know?
Also, there's zero chance that you leave me in a house with that ring that you put in the envelope, that I leave it in the envelope. I'm just saying. Frodo was not curious at all. I'd have been like, ooh, let me fuck
You're
around
saying
with
he was
this ring.
touching himself when nobody was around?
Oh.
No, he wasn't.
By the way, for 17 years in the books, when Gandalf leaves and Bilbo leaves, he goes on his search for knowledge of the ring. It takes him 17 years when he comes back and tells Frodo he has to flee. It takes him 17 years to prove that yes, it is the One Ring.
Not to be pedantic, but I heard it was 13 years. But either way, yeah, it's
13,
it's over 10 years. There's a decade.
Not just
plus
a few
goes by.
months, which is what
Yeah.
it kind of makes it feel like.
It's never said or implied, so technically, if you want to, you could just say it's the passage of time, and that is there's nothing to say it isn't. You know,
Except for that nobody ages.
The screenwriter Philippa Boyens would totally agree with you, even if Peter Jackson might say otherwise, because Philippa Boyens was one of those people where she was very instrumental in the writing. That's why her, Fran Walsh, and Peter Jackson were pretty much a trio writing this movie, and a lot of it fell on Fran and Philippa while Peter was out filming stuff to rewrite things. So she's one of the primary creative forces behind this. And for example, they brought up Tom Bombadil at some point, like, is Tom Bombadil his absence from the movie? And she said, well, yeah, we felt like after talking with Peter, we kind of felt like he didn't really push the movie along, that the movie was largely Frodo's story, and Tom Bombadil didn't really push the movie along in that way. So we could kind of cut him out. It really wouldn't affect the story at all. And we don't tell you it didn't happen either. So who's to say that they didn't stop by the woods of whatever the name is? She started naming the names from the book of like the different parts of the adventure. She goes, we don't show you that they didn't do that. So if you're the kind of person where you're a purist and you feel like they definitely ran into Tom, sure they did. It just happened off camera. And I'm like, I love that way of storytelling, that you just left it open so that those of us that have a committed story headcanon, it doesn't negate that. It just doesn't show it.
It's also one of the things that's marvelous about turning that novel into this fantastic movie is Peter Jackson and whoever helped Fran and Philippa knew exactly what to cut and what to emphasize for the pacing and needs of a movie. Because, you know, they leave the Shire and they get going and they're on the run. You know, it's like they're instantly pursued by these things. And then the Tom Bombadil thing is a huge section of that first book. And it brings the chase and the tension to a complete halt, and they stay and listen to fucking Tom Bombadil singing about how much he loves the fucking trees and shit for like a week, under, you know, his staying in his house and whatnot, singing silly little songs. And for the pacing and structure of a movie, it would be disastrous. I think it's probably the smartest cut that you could make.
It would have been total fan service with no real narrative purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's kind of what happened in the second book. Or not in the second book, in The Hobbit.
Yeah. They turned a single book into a trilogy, which is the opposite of what made Lord of the Rings such a successful trilogy. But we'll probably review that at some point. Not soon, please. Maybe next year or the year after.
Yeah.
Years of series 4. We'll try The Hobbit. The pottery at the Shire is very reminiscent of pottery that I've seen at a bunch of Renaissance festivals. So if you want to drink like a hobbit, go to your local Renaissance festival. They probably sell mugs that look exactly what the hobbits are drinking out of at their in the Shire. I thought that was a nice. I have mugs in my cabinet right now that look right like they would come right out of that.
I feel like I've drank coffee out of a mug like that at your house.
Chances are I don't have glasses in my house. I don't have water glasses or champagne glasses or wine glasses. All I have is coffee mugs of different shapes and sizes. You want a water? Sure, drink it out of this coffee mug.
That's because you ingest coffee like it's water.
I feel that my inner Gilmore Girl is coming out. Anyways, we're not. So we eventually leave the Shire. Frodo is told by.
Hang on. I have a note about
Go ahead.
Sam's eavesdropping
Yes.
when he finds him outside the window.
Hey, dropping no eaves.
That's a line. That line isn't in the book, and I love that line. I ain't been dropping no eaves, sir. it's
such a classic line. It really makes you think of that sentence. You're eavesdropping. I didn't drop any eaves.
It tells you book volumes worth about the character too. You know what I mean?
How unworldly he is, and
but then he can't lie when he's confronted. He's not going to lie to Gandalf either.
I'd love what he says. He's like, I didn't hear much, just something about a ring and a Dark Lord, and then I don't know the entire plot.
The end of the world.
And the end of the world, yeah. And the thing about Sam is that he's painted early on as this, like, he's the closest we get to like a really perfect good person. Like, he's got a good heart and he's dedicated. He's loyal. He's not so naive that he will get, the wool pulled over his eyes every moment, but he tries hard. He works hard. He's a cook. He's shy. A lot of things that people find endearing. And like we talked about briefly when the movie ended, it's funny that you have this character which is, for all intents and purposes, pretty damn perfect, except he hates fucking Gollum. Every good guy that we know in a movie hates somebody, whether it's Kermit hating Leon with the boomerang fish or whoever. It's all these heroic people, and they just pick one fucking person to be like, no, I love the entire world except you. But yeah, Sam is wonderful.
I think Sam's makes a little more sense because Gollum is, one, a reflection of what Frodo could turn into, which terrifies him, and two, kind of trying to like kill Frodo. So like at least Sam's hatred of Gollum makes some sense.
Yeah, it makes some sense, but it's still like he's such a wholesome like character that he's like, yes, everyone, we're married, blah blah blah. Fuck you, Gollum, I hate you, you son of a. It's
And J.R.R. Tolkien, in interviews and letters afterwards, he was asked the straight up question, and this is where I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Minor spoilers. If you haven't seen the Lord of the Rings trilogy, maybe this isn't the right podcast to listen to right now. But somebody asked him if Samwise didn't treat Gollum as badly as he did, would Gollum have betrayed them at the end? And Tolkien said no. Straight up no. If Sam was kinder to Gollum would have stayed their friend and they would have thrown the ring in together.
Yeah.
And it's like, fuck, Sam. Fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Fuck you, man. Like, you were so good for the entire movie, but every time you see him treating Gollum like shit, there's a part, I think, within a part of each of us that's going, that doesn't feel right, man. Like, I get that you're 100%. Mad at him, but that's not right. You shouldn't treat him like that.
Like, I understand, but not like that.
No, be suspicious. That's fine. Don't actually like try to throw him off a cliff and shit like. But then again, who is his mentor at this point aside from Gandalf, which straight up tells hobbits to kill themselves several times in this
movie?
Not
hobbits, just Pippin.
just Pip. Yeah, I'm sorry. Gandalf just hates one fucking person in this entire world, and that's Pippin. Yeah, at one point, like, they get Sauron, and they're like, we should kill him when he's like cloistered in his tower. And Gandalf's like, no, we should show him mercy.
Saruman.
What about Pippin? Oh no, we should fucking ring him up, like,
Yeah. It's like, what about Pippin? Oh, no, that guy should kill himself.
Yeah, that dude needs to die.
Gandalf does not suffer fools, and Pippin is a fool.
Yeah. You fool of a toque.
Yeah.
So we find our wonderful hobbits venturing out into the world, and of course they have the classic, like, what could go wrong? And the other two hobbits crash into the scene, being chased by Farmer Maggot. Well, I thought that was an interesting name for a farmer. They're running through the field.
We ran through his field in Lord of the Rings Online.
Oh, did we?
Which has a meticulous recreation of all the scenery in the Hobbit movies. I was clocking it as I was watching the film. I was like, wow, they really built the Shire largely based on the movie in that game.
Which, yeah, for listeners that might not have heard us talking about it before, we played the Lord of the Rings Online for a while. I mean, we played it for like a month, maybe two, something like that. Yeah, not a super long time. Like, we didn't get deep into Endgame or anything, but enough to see a lot of the, like, I was at the top of Weathertop and went by Bree and a bunch of other places. So, really cool game. If you like sightseeing and you're into Lord of the Rings, it's a way to really experience a lot of that, the side stories and bumping into the main cast as they're on their bigger adventures and stuff like that. It's a good game. It's old. It's very old. And it's an MMO. So be prepared for old MMO, but it's fun.
You really want to do this?
Here. Now? Yes. Okay. Okay. Let's do it!
I think this is probably a good place for us to rein in our discussion for just a little bit, because our heroes now, some of our heroes have left the Shire and they're going out into the world. We've talked about some of the production value and stuff like that, which we'll get into more of those production notes too. But I have one question that I think would be a good way to leave this episode of our podcast. And it feels to me that this is a cultural touchstone in a lot of ways, that because it came out every year around Christmas time, 3 years in a row, it became a quick tradition with people, or there was some kind of connection in your personal life. And I wanted to ask you if either one of you have any like personal connection, not to Lord of the Rings in general, but to seeing the movies when they first came out. Was there something a story that you wanted to tell about that time?
I remember going and seeing them midnight showings with my friends. I remember seeing Fellowship of the Ring, like I said before, 13 times in theaters, and a lot of times
Jesus
that was just
Christ,
me.
Jamie.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm a nerd. A lot of times that was me in a theater completely by myself. I got to watch this movie on the big screen in a theater by myself, and it was amazing.
This was a time when my love for movies was like kind of budding. I was working at a movie theater just previously to these movies coming out. We had started the Matrix trilogy of movies coming out. Then this was coming, and it was just all these great movies were happening in theaters, and I was just loving it. It was my like just post high school young adult life, and getting to see a bunch of movies with my friends that were really awesome on the big screen. So I have sort of that it was part of that formation of my love for cinema.
For me, it was there was a real weird personal connection that there was a girl in high school that I had fallen in love with, and we never quite dated, but we remained friends. And then we ended up dating many years after high school, like, about the time that these movies came out, in the sense that when we went together as like a date to see Fellowship of the Ring, when we first started actually like kind of dating each other, or first started really talking, and then we went to see the second movie when we were together as a couple, and we were for sure together. And the next year we broke up right before Return of the King released. And we both made a point of going, it kind of makes sense that we should see this movie together because we saw the first two together. So we went to see Return of the King together, like, I don't know, 3 days after we broke up or something like that. And oh my God, what
that sounds so painful.
It was super, like, I'm kind of glad I did it just because like it did tie a bow on the end of the relationship in a way. But that movie was so hard to get through, like, and the 19 million endings at the end, and part of me is like, come on, man, come on.
Get me out of here.
Let me go. Please, let my people go. I feel like Moses. But yeah, so for me, there was this weird connection that for years after this, I couldn't go back and watch this again because it was so tied into that, that big relationship that mattered a lot to me in that part of my life. So it's weird going back now many years later, and I have these snippets where I recall that time, but there's enough time and distance now where it doesn't not like I'm sitting here crying over my ex from 20 years ago or something. But yeah, I assume we're going to be rating it in our next episode. I don't think we're going to have 2 more episodes of this, but we will continue the conversation later. We will finish our recap and go into more conversation about the music and a lot of trivia. I got so many trivia notes that are interesting and add a lot of depth and layers to this movie. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you all. Any last thoughts before we start to sign off from either of you?
Nope. Just it's nice. It's kind of interesting that where we're stopping is right where the movie leaves its comfort zone, literally, in the Shire. Yeah. So we're gonna be dour and dreadful for the next one.
It's all downhill from here. It's all gonna be pain and torture and fear. And all the things
sadness.
Yep. The things that were forgotten are now lost or whatever.
Pretty elves.
Yeah. Pretty elves and lots of cool battles and awesome music. And we will get to all of that in our next episode. Make sure you follow us on social media. Obviously, Blue Sky, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, whatever. Look for us. For now, I am Kelly.
I'm Keith.
I And Jamie.
See you later.
Bye.
May you not live in interesting times, but I guess if you're listening to this, you're fucked. You are living during interesting times, so...
Yeah.
There's no escaping that one.
And what's Gandalf say? Like, you just have to make do with what you're given, basically.
Yep.
It's what you do with the time that you have.
So when the world was ending, we know that we stood up and we made a podcast.
Why do you do this?
I'm going to call the police.
You go ahead,